My neighbor falsely accused my dog of attacking him in a disgusting attempt to have him put down, and teamed up with my sister to try and force me out of my own home. They spread lies, organized a smear campaign, and made my life hell. So I recorded everything. And then I carefully orchestrated their complete social and legal downfall that I brought my dog, Max, home from a city shelter a year after my husband's passing. I often joked that Max embodied my husband's spirit, the same birthday, the same joyful expression, eyes that gleamed as if they sought to mend the entire world. Everyone adored him until one day, my neighbor, Brett, pounded on my gate. "Hey, what's happening? Your canine bit me last night during your stroll," he bellowed, before I could even utter a word. I was speechless, but Brett had no such difficulty. "Listen closely, young lady," he declared. "You can either hand me $50,000 for the damages, or I'll sue and have the dog put down." He then gestured towards the alleged injuries, a medium-sized adhesive dressing covering a small area of his arm. "And please understand, I fully support the justice system, but Max struggles to ascend stairs on his own." I couldn't fathom how he could have sprinted, leaped over a 6-foot barrier, and assaulted Brett. I suppose he sensed my skepticism, because he stormed back into his house, slamming the door. I intended to resolve this independently, but less. Then an hour later, I heard a knock. It wasn't Brett, it was my sister, Janet. She informed me Brett had texted her, asking her to reason with me, and she instantly sided with him, which stung more than I anticipated. We used to be inseparable, like the sun and moon, but after my husband passed, and she witnessed the generosity of his family towards me, something shifted. Suddenly, I was the most self-absorbed and egotistical person she had ever encountered. This instance was no different, as she soon began her familiar lecture about considering others, proclaiming Max a nuisance. I knew she didn't believe me when I said I would consider it, but it silenced her and prompted her departure, which was sufficient for me. The next morning, I awoke to a package in the mail, a homeowners association fine for sheltering a dangerous animal. As I reviewed the letter, I glanced at Max, whose head rested on my lap, his tail wagging as if he dreamt of chasing a tennis ball. It was then I knew he was worth fighting for. Over the next few days, Brett's cousin, who worked as a pet euthanasia technician for animal control, intruded upon my home twice daily for unscheduled inspections. Max was naturally friendly, the type to enthusiastically greet a stranger, but each time his cousin entered, Max would cower behind my legs and urinate on the rug. It was clear then that I needed to engage legal counsel. Fortunately, the first lawyer I consulted offered a wide smile as I outlined the case. She assured me this was an open and shut matter, and we would not only save Max, but also prosper in the process. However, within 24 hours, she informed me she was withdrawing from my case and refunding the retainer fee. I attempted to reach her or request an explanation, but she never responded. The subsequent 2 lawyers followed precisely the same pattern. I didn't possess extensive legal knowledge, but I understood this couldn't be normal. It was around this time that Brett contacted me again. His text read, "So, are you finally ready to put the canine down?" That's when the realization struck me. Brett's father was wealthy, the kind of wealth that afforded golf club memberships and Rolex collections, and he was using his influence to manipulate my lawyers into abandoning me. This was never about monetary gain. It was about orchestrating Max's demise. And if he intended to leave me destitute, I was resolved to reciprocate. I began meticulously documenting everything. Every instance Brett appeared at my gate, every menacing text, every inspection from his cousin. I captured photographs of Max playing gently with neighborhood children at the park, videos of him wagging his tail when the mail carrier arrived. I needed concrete evidence that my dog was not the menace Brett was portraying him to be. One afternoon, while browsing on a social media platform, I noticed something intriguing. Brett had recently applied to a therapy dog certification program and been rejected. The comments on his post were quite revealing. Several individuals mentioned his temper issues and aggressive behavior at the local dog park. One woman even recounted how he had shouted at her puppy for sniffing his shoes. The pieces of the puzzle began to fit together. I reached out to my neighbors, inquiring if anyone had security cameras that might have captured anything the night Brett claimed Max bit him. Mrs. Chun, from 2 houses down, agreed to review her footage. The following morning, she knocked on my door, a USB drive in her hand. "You must see this," she stated, her expression serious. We watched the recording together on my laptop. There was Brett, clear as day, in his backyard around 11 p.m. He was holding what appeared to be a garden rake. Then, he performed an action that made my stomach churn. He pressed the metal prongs against his own arm, wincing as he dragged them across his skin. That deceitful. I stopped myself before completing the thought. Mrs. Chun patted my shoulder. I'll testify if you need me to. Armed with this undeniable evidence, I drove directly to the police station. The officer at the desk accepted my USB drive and assured me they would investigate. I felt a surge of hope for the first time in days. However, when I called to follow up the next afternoon, they informed me the file had been corrupted, something about a system error. That's impossible, I retorted. It was working perfectly yesterday. I'm sorry, ma'am. These things happen with digital files sometimes. I knew it wasn't a coincidence. Brett's father possessed connections throughout this town. Matters worsened when Janet began disseminating rumors at our church. I learned from Catherine, one of the few friends who still communicated with me, that Janet had been telling everyone I had become mentally unstable since my husband's death. She claimed I was projecting my grief onto Max, treating him like a human instead of seeking proper assistance. You converse with the dog as if it's your deceased husband, Catherine whispered after service one Sunday. People are beginning to worry about you. I observed as former friends averted their gaze. Whispered when I passed by. Even the pastor suggested I might benefit from grief counseling instead of focusing so intently on that animal. The next escalation occurred on a Tuesday morning. I woke to discover my entire vegetable garden obliterated. Every plant I had lovingly tended was withered and brown. The scent of chemicals permeated the air. I found a note tucked under my doormat. This is what happens to things that do not belong. I installed security cameras that afternoon, positioning them to cover every angle of my property. But during the next inspection, Brett's cousin, Jonathan, somehow managed to deactivate them. He asserted Max had leaped up and collided with him, causing him to stumble into the camera mount. By the time he departed, 3 of my 4 cameras were mysteriously offline. The truth about Janet came to light by chance. I was at the grocery store when I saw them together, Brett and Janet, holding hands in the frozen food aisle. She was laughing at something he said, leaning into him as if they had been together for years. When she noticed me, her face blanched. How long? I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. It's not what you think, she began. How long? 6 months, Brett interjected, wrapping his arm around her waist. Not that it's any of your business. 6 months. She had been dating him for 6 months, while feigning to be the concerned sister. Every visit, every lecture about considering others, she had been collaborating with him. The HOA emergency meeting notice arrived 2 days later. Vote on the removal of dangerous animal from property at 42 Maple Street. They had scheduled it for that Friday, leaving me with hardly any time to prepare. I spent the next 2 days knocking on doors, speaking to every neighbor who had ever smiled at Max. Mrs. Patterson remembered how Max had located her cat when it went missing. The Johnsons spoke about how their toddler learned to walk by holding onto Max's fur. Even gruff Mr. Williams conceded Max had never once barked during his afternoon naps. We'll be there, Mrs. Patterson promised. This is wrong. The meeting convened at the community center. Brett sat in the front row with a stack of papers. His father, a man I had only seen in the society pages of our local newspaper, sat beside him in an expensive suit. Janet was also present, avoiding my gaze. Brett stood first, presenting what he claimed were veterinary records indicating Max had rabies. The documents appeared official, complete with letterhead and signatures. This dog poses a public health risk, he announced. It's only a matter of time before it attacks a child. I felt my hands trembling as I rose. Those records are fabricated. I had Max tested this morning. I held up the genuine veterinary report. He's completely healthy. No rabies, no aggression markers, nothing. Brett's father then stood. Anyone who votes against my son's proposal should be aware that I employ excellent lawyers. If this dog harms anyone, I will personally sue every person who permitted it to remain in this neighborhood. The room fell silent. I watched as several of my supporters shifted uneasily in their seats. One by one, they looked away. When it came time to vote, only Mrs. Patterson and the Johnsons raised their hands in my favor. I departed the meeting feeling defeated. Max greeted me at the door, tail wagging, completely oblivious to how close he had come to being taken away. It was then I recalled Dr. Nathan, my late husband's closest friend from veterinary school. He was now a certified veterinary behaviorist working at a clinic 2 towns over. Of course I'll evaluate Max, Nathan said when I called. I should have reached out sooner. I'm sorry. We scheduled the evaluation for the following Monday. I thought it would be straightforward, but I should have known Brett wouldn't surrender easily. As Nathan commenced the temperament assessment in my backyard, I heard barking from the street. Brett's cousin suddenly appeared at my gate with 2 aggressive-looking dogs straining against their leashes. Just passing by, Jonathan called out, though I had never observed him walking dogs before. The dogs were snarling, lunging at the fence. Max's ears flattened, and he pressed against my leg, but he did not bark or growl. He simply stood there, trembling slightly but remaining calm. "This is remarkable," Nathan documented. "Most dogs would react aggressively to that level of provocation. Max's temperament is exceptional." His professional assessment carried a weight that Brett's money could not overcome. The official report stated that Max posed no threat to public safety and demonstrated remarkable restraint even under duress. Brett must have realized he was losing. That night, around 2 a.m., I heard Max whimpering. I found him cowering in the corner of the living room. The back door was slightly ajar. I grabbed my phone and crept toward the kitchen, where I could hear someone moving around. Brett was in my backyard, holding what appeared to be a piece of meat. The odor emanating from it made my eyes water, some type of irritant designed to provoke Max into biting. "Come here, doggy," he was saying. "Come get a treat." I pressed record on my phone just as Max appeared in the doorway, but instead of approaching the meat, Max recoiled, whining. That's when Brett seized him by the collar, attempting to force the meat toward his face. "Stop," I shouted. Brett spun around, still holding Max. "He attacked me. You saw it. I saw you break into my house and assault my dog." I kept recording. "And so will the police." He released Max and attempted to grab my phone, but I had already retreated into the house. I locked the door and dialed 911 while Brett hammered on the glass, demanding I let him in. The police later found the meat in his pocket, tested to contain capsaicin and other irritants designed to induce pain and aggression in dogs. They arrested him for trespassing and animal cruelty. During the hearing, everything was revealed. Janet broke down on the stand, admitting she had provided Brett with copies of my keys and my daily schedule. She had hoped that if I was compelled to move, she could persuade me to sell the house and divide the inheritance from my husband's family. "I'm sorry," she sobbed. I thought it wasn't fair that you received everything." The judge reviewed all the evidence, including Brett's history of filing false complaints against other neighbors' pets. Apparently, mine wasn't the first dog he had targeted. 3 other families had been forced to rehome their pets after Brett's harassment. Brett received 6 months of community service and a restraining order that prohibited him from coming within 500 feet of me or Max. His father, mortified by the public scandal and the negative attention it brought to his business, terminated Brett's access to the family money. Janet faced her own repercussions. Word spread rapidly through our church and community about her actions. She found herself excluded from social gatherings, ignored at the grocery store. The betrayal of attempting to steal from your own grieving sister did not sit well with anyone. The HOA board, no longer under the influence of Brett's father's threats, officially cleared Max of all accusations. They even dispatched a formal apology letter, acknowledging that the emergency meeting had been improperly conducted. One by one, neighbors who had turned their backs began reaching out. Mrs. Williams brought over a casserole and apologized for not defending us. The Thompsons invited Max to their daughter's birthday party. Even the mail carrier started bringing special treats for Max on his route. Max lived out his remaining years surrounded by love and protection. He never understood how close he had come to being taken away, how many people had conspired against him. All he knew was that his favorite spot on the sofa was always warm, his bowl was always full, and his human was always there to scratch behind his ears. Sometimes, I still encounter Janet around town. She always looks away first. Brett relocated out of the neighborhood after his community service concluded. I heard he attempted the same scheme in another town, but was arrested again when they discovered our case in his background check. As for me and Max, we found our peace. Every morning, we would sit on the porch and observe the sunrise. His eyes still gleamed with that same light that reminded me of my husband, that gaze that promised everything would be all right. And in the end it was. Continuation, the aftermath and escalation the morning after Brett's arrest, I believe the worst was behind us. Max seemed more at ease, actually eating his breakfast without constantly glancing over his shoulder. I was cleaning his bowl when my phone vibrated with a text from an unknown number. "You think you won? This isn't over." I immediately blocked the number, but within minutes, another message arrived from a different one, then another. By noon, I had received over 30 threatening texts from various numbers. Some were subtle warnings about accidents that happened to pets, while others graphically described what could befall dogs who bite innocent people. I captured screenshots of everything and drove to the police station. The same officer who had taken my report about Brett appeared weary when he saw me approach. "The restraining order only covers Brett specifically," he explained after reviewing the messages. "Unless we can prove he's sending these, there's not much we can do." "But who else would?" "Ma'am, I comprehend your frustration, but without concrete evidence." I left feeling more vulnerable than before. That evening, I discovered my mailbox had been crammed with printed articles about dog attacks, each one highlighted with red marker. The last page was a photograph of Max from my social media, his face circled with the words, "Next time," scrawled across it. Catherine called me that night, her voice hushed. "I overheard something at church today. Brett's been talking to people, convincing them you trained Max to attack him. He's showing everyone photos of his injuries and claiming the police are corrupt. But he was arrested. He's telling people you seduced one of the officers. I'm sorry, but I thought you should know what's being said." The campaign against me intensified over the following days. My veterinarian called to inform me that someone had reported them for enabling a dangerous animal owner. The groomer I had used for years suddenly had no available appointments. Even the pet store clerk seemed anxious when I entered for dog food. Max began exhibiting signs of stress. He wouldn't eat unless I hand-fed him. He flinched at every noise. Cowered when anyone walked past our house. The confident, loving dog I had known was vanishing before my eyes. Then came the first genuine escalation. I was walking Max early one morning, attempting to avoid other dog walkers, when a car sped past us. Someone hurled a bag out the window that detonated upon impact, covering both of us in what smelled like rotten fish and motor oil. Max yelped and tried to bolt, nearly pulling me into traffic. A woman jogging nearby helped me get him home. She mentioned seeing the same car circling the neighborhood for days. Blue sedan, tinted windows. Made me nervous enough that I started carrying pepper spray. Bathing Max consumed hours. Whatever was in that bag had matted his fur and burned my hands. The vet said it was likely a combination of fish oil and industrial cleaner designed to cause skin irritation. Max required medicated baths for a week. During this period, I noticed more unsettling alterations in my neighborhood. People who had apologized after Brett's arrest started avoiding me again. New beware of dog signs appeared on my street, all pointing toward my house. Someone had even spray-painted "Dangerous Dog" on the sidewalk outside my gate, though it was cleaned up before I could photograph it. Janet's involvement became clearer when Catherine discovered something shocking. My sister had initiated a private social media group called Neighborhood Safety Watch, where she shared concerns about dangerous pets. The group had over 200 members, all being fed narratives about Max's history of aggression and my mental instability. "She's posting photos of you from years ago," Catherine showed me on her phone, claiming they're recent and you look unhinged. "She's even sharing your therapy appointments from after your husband died as proof you're unstable." The violation felt like a physical blow. Those therapy sessions had been sacred, my safe space to grieve. Now, Janet was weaponizing them against me. The next incident occurred at the park. I had begun taking Max there at dawn, hoping to avoid people. We were alone when 3 large dogs appeared, no owners in sight. They circled us, growling. Max pressed against my legs, shaking. I recognized one of them. It belonged to Brett's friend from the country club. I tried to slowly retreat, but they followed. One lunged at Max, who cried out, but did not retaliate. I screamed for help, holding Max as the dog snapped at us. Finally, a park ranger arrived and dispersed them with an air horn. "Those dogs were definitely left here on purpose," he stated, helping me check Max for injuries. "All 3 had collars, but no tags. That's not accidental." He filed a report. But without proof of who released them, nothing came of it. Max had scratches on his legs and was so traumatized he would not leave the house for days. The psychological warfare continued. Pizza deliveries I had not ordered appeared at all hours. My garden, which I had replanted, was destroyed again, this time with salt, ensuring nothing would grow. Someone kept enrolling my address for every mailing list imaginable. My mailbox overflowed with junk mail daily. Then, I learned about the petition. Janet and Brett's supporters had started collecting signatures to have me declared an unfit pet owner. They claimed I was harboring a dangerous animal despite multiple incidents and posed a threat to neighborhood safety. The petition already had over 100 signatures. "They're going door to door," Mrs. Patterson warned me, telling people if they don't sign, they're liable if Max attacks someone. Fear-mongering at its worst. I tried to counter their narrative, but I was one person against an organized campaign. For every neighbor I spoke to, they had already reached 5. Some people signed simply to make them leave. Others genuinely believed the falsehoods they had been fed. The breaking point came when someone called animal control with an anonymous tip that I was operating an illegal dog fighting ring in my basement. The officer who appeared looked embarrassed. "I have to investigate all reports," he apologized, glancing around my obviously normal home. "Though this is the 5th call about you this week. Someone truly has it out for you." That night, I couldn't sleep. Max curled up beside me, occasionally whimpering in his dreams. I stroked his fur and wondered how long we could endure this. Relocating felt like conceding victory to them, but remaining meant subjecting Max to continued trauma. The next morning brought a new horror. My car tires had been slashed, and the windshield was cracked. A note under the wiper read, "Leave town or the dog gets it next." I called Nathan, desperate for guidance. He was furious when I explained everything. "This is organized harassment," he stated. "Have you considered obtaining legal counsel?" I tried. "No one will take the case. It's like Brett's father has." "Wait, I know someone. She's from the next county, no connections to Brett's family. Let me call her." While awaiting Nathan's contact, I uncovered something that altered everything. Catherine had been conducting her own investigation and discovered Brett's error. He had been using a fake social media account to coordinate the harassment, but he had logged in from his work computer. The IT department at his company had records. "My cousin works there," Catherine explained. "Brett doesn't know the company monitors all internet usage. There are timestamps, IP addresses, everything. We had him." Screenshots of Brett organizing the dog dumping at the park, arranging the car that threw substances at us, even discussing ways to make me break so I would leave town. He had violated the restraining order hundreds of times. But before I could take this evidence to the police, Janet made her move. She appeared at my door with two official-looking people. "These are social workers," she announced. "I've filed for emergency intervention based on your mental state. You're a danger to yourself and others." The social workers appeared uncomfortable, but explained they had to conduct an evaluation. They asked intrusive questions about my mental health, my relationship with Max, my grief over my husband. Janet had coached them well, providing just enough truth mixed with lies to paint a convincing picture. "She talks to the dog as if it's her deceased husband," Janet told them. "She's delusional, refuses to see reality. I'm worried she'll harm herself or someone else." I remained composed, answered their questions honestly. I showed them Max's veterinary records, Nathan's behavioral assessment, even character references from neighbors who still supported me. The social workers took notes, said they'd be in touch. After they left, Janet lingered. "Just give up," she said. "Move away, start fresh. This is for your own good. This is about the house, isn't it? You want me gone so you can claim I abandoned the property." Her face hardened. "You don't deserve what his family gave you. I'm the one who supported you both for years. Where's my reward? Get out." She left, but not before adding, "Brett's not giving up. Neither am I." That night, I installed indoor cameras. If they were going to escalate, I needed proof. Max stayed close, sensing my anxiety. We had become prisoners in our own home. The final battle, and a new beginning. The next assault was more personal. Someone hacked my social media accounts, posting disturbing content that made me appear unstable. Photos of deceased animals with captions about what happens to bad dogs. By the time I regained control, screenshots had been widely shared throughout Janet's safety group. Local news picked up the narrative. Neighborhood dispute escalates. Dangerous dog or targeted harassment. The coverage was biased, focusing on Brett's injuries and portraying me as an unstable woman who threatened multiple neighbors. They failed to mention his arrest or the evidence of self-inflicted harm. Dr. Nathan's lawyer friend, Sarah, finally called. She had reviewed everything and was appalled. "This is coordinated harassment, possibly conspiracy," she stated. "But we need more concrete evidence linking Brett to the recent incidents, despite the restraining order." I provided her with Catherine's information about the work computer. Sarah's eyes brightened. "This could be huge. If we can prove he's orchestrating this campaign while under a restraining order, he's facing serious charges." But Brett must have sensed the walls closing in. The harassment intensified. Deceased animals began appearing on my doorstep, squirrels, birds, even a cat. Each had a note. "Your dog is next." I reported everything, but the police seemed overwhelmed. "We're doing our best," one officer said, but without catching someone in the act. Max stopped eating entirely. The vet said it was severe anxiety. He prescribed medication, but I could see my dog fading. The light in his eyes, the one that reminded me so much of my husband, was dimming. One evening, while trying to coax Max to eat, I heard glass shattering. Someone had thrown a brick through my living room window. Attached was a photo of Max at the vet's office that morning. They were watching us everywhere. I called Sarah in tears. "I can't endure this anymore. They're going to harm him. Don't give up now. We're so close. The subpoena for Brett's work computer goes through tomorrow." But that night, everything escalated beyond what I could have imagined. I awoke to Max barking, something he never did anymore. The house was filled with smoke. Someone had lit fires in trash cans around my property, creating a smoke screen. I grabbed Max and ran outside, only to find people in my yard. They scattered when they saw me, but not before I recognized one. Brett's cousin, Jonathan, despite the restraining order that should have kept him away. The fire department arrived quickly, extinguishing the flames before they could spread. But the message was clear: they could reach us anytime. "This must cease," the fire chief stated. "Whatever's transpiring here, someone's going to get hurt." I spent the remainder of the night in my car with Max, too terrified to return inside. As dawn broke, I made a decision. I couldn't wait for the legal system. I needed to seize control. I began with Janet's group. Using a fake account, I infiltrated her safety watch and documented everything. The falsehoods, the coordination of harassment, the delight with which they planned each attack. I captured screenshots of every post, every comment. Then, I created my own social media campaign. The truth about Max went viral within days. I posted the security footage of Brett harming himself, the veterinary assessments, testimonies from neighbors who had been threatened into silence. I shared the harassment I had endured, the deceased animals, the fires. Public opinion began to shift. People who had believed Brett's lies started questioning the narrative. Local animal rights groups became involved, demanding justice for Max. The story spread beyond our town. Brett panicked. He made a crucial error, posting from his real account. That lying which will pay for this, her, and that mangy mutt. Sarah capitalized on it. Combined with the evidence from his work computer, we had enough for serious charges. But the police seemed reluctant to act, and I suspected Brett's father's influence was still at play. It was then that unexpected assistance arrived. Dr. Nathan had reached out to his professional network. Veterinarians from 3 states had been following the story and were outraged. They organized a protest outside City Hall, demanding action. No animal should be persecuted based on lies, Nathan spoke to the crowd, and no pet owner should endure terrorism for protecting their companion. The media attention exploded. Suddenly, reporters wanted to hear my side. I gave interviews with Max beside me, his gentle nature evident to anyone watching. Support poured in from across the country. Brett's father could no longer ignore the negative attention his business was receiving. Hundreds of complaints daily, clients withdrawing contracts. The family name he had worked so hard to build was being destroyed. He came to my house himself. The first time I had seen him up close. He looked older than his newspaper photos, worn down. "What will it take to end this?" he asked. "Justice," I replied. "Your son needs to face consequences, real ones." "He's unwell," the man admitted, "has been since childhood. We've covered for him too long." He revealed Brett had done this before. In other towns, always targeting pet owners, always escalating until families fled. They had paid settlements, swept it under the rug, but this time was different. "You fought back," he said. "No one's ever done that before." I recorded our conversation. His admission that they had known about Brett's behavior and enabled it was damning. When I posted it online, the remaining support for Brett evaporated. Janet's world also crumbled. Her safety watch group disbanded as members realized they had been manipulated. Her reputation was ruined. She lost her job when her employer saw the extent of her involvement. She came to my door one last time, no longer the confident instigator. She looked hollow, desperate. "I know you're planning to leave," she said. "Take me with you." I almost laughed at the audacity, but then she explained. Brett's supporters had turned on her when she had tried to distance herself. She had received the same threats, the same harassment. "I created a monster," she admitted. "Now it's coming for me too." I didn't trust her, but I listened. She possessed information, recordings of Brett's supporters planning their next moves, evidence of bribery, proof of who had been behind recent attacks. "Why should I believe you?" She pulled up her sleeve, revealing bruises. "Because I'm their target now too." Sarah verified Janet's information. It was legitimate enough to potentially keep Brett incarcerated longer. But utilizing it meant trusting Janet again. Max made the decision for me. When Janet knelt beside him, he licked her hand. The first time he had acknowledged her in over a year. Dogs discern things we do not. We worked with Sarah to submit the new evidence. Brett's release was delayed pending investigation. His supporters scattered, afraid of being implicated. The day Brett was supposed to be released came and went. He remained in custody, his lawyers frantically filing motions, but Janet's evidence was solid. New charges were filed. That evening, I sat with Max in our backyard. He couldn't chase squirrels anymore, but he watched them with the same joy. His breathing was labored, but his tail still wagged. The vet had been honest, maybe weeks, possibly months if we were fortunate. The stress had taken its toll, but he was safe. That was all that truly mattered. Janet left town as promised, seeking her own fresh start. She had testified against Brett's network, burning every bridge. I still did not forgive her, but I hoped she would find peace. Mrs. Patterson organized another block party. This time, it was a gentler affair. Neighbors brought blankets for Max to lie on, treats soft enough for his aging teeth. Children read him stories while he dozed in the sun. Brett's final sentence was pronounced: 5 years, no early release. His network dismantled, his father's Influence broken. It wasn't perfect justice, but it was enough. That night, Max slept beside me as always. His breathing was rough, but his presence remained comforting. We had won, but the victory had cost us both so much. I thought about my husband, how he had instantly loved this dog at the shelter. He's a fighter, he had said, just needs someone to fight for him. I had kept that promise. Through everything, I had fought, and Max had fought too, harder than any dog should have to. The next morning, Max could not lift his head. I called the vet, knowing what was coming. She arrived within an hour, gentle and understanding. He's tired, she said softly, but look how he watches you. He knows he's loved. I held Max as she prepared the injection. His eyes met mine, still gleaming with that familiar light. I told him about the park, about tennis balls and belly rubs. I promised my husband was waiting for him. His tail gave one last weak wag, then stillness. I buried him beneath the oak tree in our backyard, the one he had loved to nap under. Mrs. Patterson helped, as did Catherine. Even some neighbors who had once turned away came to pay respects. That evening, I found a package on my doorstep. No delivery truck, no doorbell ring. Inside was a collar, Max's actual collar, the one he had worn that first day home from the shelter. A note was attached. Found this in storage. Thought you should have it back. He was the best boy. Nathan. I held the collar, remembering that first day, how Max had bounded into our lives, healing hearts he didn't know were broken. Brett was in prison, his network destroyed, the harassment had ended, but the cost. I looked at the empty dog bed, the unused leash. The house felt hollow without the click of nails on hardwood, the gentle snoring at night. But then I remembered Max's last gift. In fighting for him, I had rediscovered my strength. I had learned to stand up, to document, to demand justice. I uncovered a community of supporters I never knew existed. The next morning, I drove to the municipal shelter, not to adopt. I wasn't ready, but to volunteer, to help other dogs find their fighters. The shelter director recognized me from the news coverage. "We followed your story," she said. "What you did for Max inspired many people." She showed me the new wing they had built with donations that poured in during the trial, the Max Memorial Wing. The sign read, "For dogs who need extra love." Inside were the challenging cases, the old, the sick, the fearful dogs like Max, whom others might overlook. But each one had that same light in their eyes, that same capacity for love. I began volunteering twice a week, walking dogs, socializing the anxious ones, assisting with adoptions. It wasn't the same as having Max, but it honored his memory. One day, a family came in. Their story sounded familiar. A neighbor had threatened their elderly dog, claiming it was dangerous. They were frightened, uncertain what to do. I sat with them for hours, sharing everything I had learned. Document everything. Don't back down. Trust your dog. Fight for them. They left with hope and my phone number. "Call if you need anything," I said. That became my new normal, helping families facing similar situations. Sarah and I created a legal resource guide. Catherine managed a support group online. We built a network of our own, but for protection, not persecution. Brett served his full sentence. I know because I checked. He was released to a halfway house 3 states away, prohibited from returning. His father's company had collapsed. After the scandal, Janet had vanished entirely, starting over somewhere new. I still live in the same house. The garden grew back stronger than ever.